Good evening, everyone. How are you? So, thought I would take this fun Saturday evening because Dallas is still yucky outside, and just talk about Kender. I know some people like Kender, some people don't like Kender, some people hate Kender, some people, you hear the word and they want to like lock up the family jewelry, not the family jewels. Those are distinctly different. But I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive so we kind of understand why Kender are the way they are. And this is not me kind of just rambling on about stuff. If you look inside Dragon Magazine number 101, which is from September of 1985, there's an article by Roger Moore. And he consulted a couple of people, including Harold Johnson, who's to blame for the creating Kenders in the first place, and Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Obviously, people you'd want to consult when you're talking about Kenders. So I think some things are really misunderstood about these little guys in a lot of ways. So I thought I'd go through this article a little bit and maybe just sort of give my thoughts on them. And everybody feel free to comment, share, disagree, whatever you want to do. But hey, there's the nice little image right above the article. And I'm going to just read little bits and pieces of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing because that would sort of take forever. But there are some highlights in here that I think are important. So it basically, as Dragonlance has grown, at least in '85, since its conception, various elements, including Kender, which were originally kind of thought to be like halflings, evolved into a distinct race. Yes, I'm going to use that phrase. Um, by themselves, right? So they kind of just became their own little thing. And the Roger Moore, who wrote this article, wanted to kind of give a little history for him. So which I felt was important because why are they the way they are and why do they always get played incorrectly is sort of what I'm after here. Because I think people just play them like a kleptomaniac, and I don't think that's the right way to approach Kender, but I think it's because they're largely misunderstood. So let's look at what he says. DL5, Dragons of Mystery, which is one of the Dragonlance adventure modules, which I've got on a shelf around here somewhere, describes the origin of Kender. All Kender are descended from gnomes. Gnomes were magically and permanently changed by the artifact known as the Grey Gem. I'm sorry. Kender are all descended from gnomes who were magically and permanently changed from the artifact known as the Grey Gem, or the Greystone of Gargath. Gnomes were themselves descended from men who were magically altered by the deity Reorx. Kender thus came to possess most of the personality traits common to humans, though certain ones were often magnified while others completely disappeared, which I think that's really important to understand about Kender, because it's not that they are kleptomaniacs, just that they kind of look at things a little bit differently. So let's kind of take a little bit of a look at what happens when you create a Kender. Kender are they've kind of spread throughout Ansalon, and they did that during the Age of Dreams. Though not much is really known about them from the official histories because the Kender probably wandered off with the history book. But the basic society, if you look at the society of Kender, they kind of they live in families, parents and kids, and sort of a town folk that live together. But the basic unit of Kender society is the immediate family, parents and children. Because Kender wanders so much, extended families don't really exist because they kind of just lose their attention span and wander off someplace. Now, a detailed discussion of Kender politics, government, and society is beyond the scope of the article. Suffice to say, Kender society is unique and ever-changing. Keyword there, ever-changing. Kender society also can be kind of hard to take. Non-Kender visitors rarely stay longer than a week in any major Kender town unless they have a sense of humor. Quote, if an asylum had turned loose its inmates and a jail its thieves to run the city, wrote one traveler of Kendermore, quote, the end result could not have been more atrocious. I have been robbed a dozen times today, twice by constables, once by a child who could barely reach my knees. I have been tormented by 100,000 questions and told a million lies. I've been run to exhaustion by my guide. Half the population wants to make a gynosphinx their mayor on the grounds they never had one, and the other half has kind of gone off in search of one. Gods take me if I ever set foot in this land again. So that kind of sums up, the Kender world in a nutshell, right? They're just kind of these little creatures that act like children. They're kind of um, it. They're not kleptomaniacs. They don't set out to steal. They just sort of wander off with stuff because it was shiny. You put the Kender down into I was talking on a live stream the other day with a bunch of people, and I think it was Richard Witters or Graph Paper somebody, who basically said that if you put Kenders in a treasure chamber and you've got some really nice shiny glass, it's kind of an unusual color. They're going to walk past all the gold and go take the shiny glass because it looked cooler. Which pretty good description of Kender. So 4 things make a Kender's personality drastically different from the typical human. Kender are utterly fearless, insatiably curious, unstoppably mobile, and independent. They'll pick up anything that's not nailed down, though a Kender with a claw hammer will get those things as well. Anything that's interesting because they're curious. So if they know what it is, it's kind of boring to them. They don't care as much. The fearlessness that all Kender possess gives them a strong sense of confidence. They are quite carefree and matter of fact about a situation, even if things look hopeless and grim. No sense in running away now. There's 500 goblins surrounding us. May as well go deal with it. Kender react differently to dangerous situations, fighting hard and fearlessly. They sometimes come up with bizarre tactics which may carry the day in battle, and they don't let their fearlessness get in the way of self-preservation most of the time. Although there was an instance in one of the books where one accidentally traveled through time, but that's a whole different story. Never a good idea to send a Kender into the past. Kender appreciate the need for caution, but their uncontrollable curiosity gets them into trouble on adventures. So I think a lot of people play Kender incorrectly in ways, because it's like, oh, you see things, you're going to steal everything. Oh, I want that +4 sword. I want that +2 dagger. It's going to be mine. Haha. No, they don't go off seeking to kind of steal on purpose. They sort of do it on accident. And the other thing is, while the whole party is arguing over, I remember this on the live stream. This was the FNGM brought up this one. If the party is arguing over, hey, who are we going to open that door? Are we going to like go in this room? Are we going to go in? The Kender's like, sure, guys, see you in there, boom, and walks inside, right? So they are really kind of a interesting one to play. So there's a section here on handling inside this article on how to handle Kender. And he says the Kender concept of personal property and theft deserves special attention because many Kender develop thieving talents. Most people assume they are merely innocent looking but sneaky burglars. This isn't so. The intense curiosity that Kender feel feeds their desire to know how locks can be opened, how to approach people unseen, and listen in on their conversations, and to reach into pockets or pouches and find interesting things to look at. Thieving comes naturally to them, so naturally they cannot see it as thieving. Kender do not steal for the sake of profit. First of all, they have little concept of value. Faced with a choice between a 2,000 GP diamond and a huge glittering chunk of purple glass, 90 Kender out of 100 will take the glass. The rest will take both, but they'll get rid of the diamond first. They picked up things out of curiosity and wander off with them. Sometimes the owner of an item, leaves before the Kender can give the item back, or else the Kender becomes enchanted with the item and forgets to return it. Exactly how Margaret Weiss wrote them, and Tracy Hickman wrote them in the Dragonlance books. If adventuring, the Kender will regard anything found in an enemy stronghold as fair game for picking up, and such items are marvelous. And such items are marvelous, curious, and might prove useful later on. Even if caught taking an item red-handed, a range of excuses will often be found. Something that doesn't belong to them is amazing. I guess I found it somewhere. Oh, I forgot that I had it. You walked out before I can give it back. I was afraid someone else would take it, so I was keeping it safe. You must have dropped it. You put it down. I didn't think you wanted it anymore. Maybe it fell into my pocket. So, it's I think that kind of sums up how you should really play them. I mean, I think they get played incorrectly, and that I think gives people a lot of angst about Kender. And so if you play them properly, I think they're actually a net plus, because while people are arguing over how to deal with a dangerous situation, the Kender just kind of goes up and does it. I have this idea of partnering a Kender with a barbarian so the Kender can start the fight and the barbarian has an excuse to rage, but that's just for fun. Kenders as a player character. For the most part, Kender characters will only appear in Dragonlance campaigns set in the world of Krynn. However, it is entirely possible that Kender have found their way into other campaign universes by toying with plane shifting devices or by other means. Krynn is the only world of origin for the Kender race, and Kender on other worlds will probably have legends concerning their home and how they arrived in their new location. So you see, it is okay to play in them outside Dragonlance. It says right there, Dragon Magazine. Boom. One of the authorities here. Kender PCs may be of any non-evil alignment. The magical effect that forces of a Kender to become evil instead will cause it to go insane with catatony, as per the Dungeon Master Guide. So if you try to turn a Kender evil, they will go nuts right there. The initial characteristics for a Kender are generated using 3d6 with a -1 modifier for strength and a +2 modifier for dexterity. So you can only have a 6 to 16 strength, 6 to 18 intelligence, 3 to 16 wisdom, because they're not very wise, 8 to 19 dexterity, 10 to 18 constitution, and 6 to 18 charisma. It does say female Kender can only have a strength score as high as 14. Yeah, I've never agreed with allowing gender to determine a strength score, but I get the point to doing it. So you can't necessarily class them as anything, but they have a tendency to max out pretty low in some cases. For instance, Kender Fighter max out at a level 5, Rangers a level 5, Cleric level 6, Druid 5, Thief Unlimited, Thief Acrobat Unlimited, and Bard level 9. So yeah, they're kind of different in the way they should be treated. And I think they get largely misunderstood because when I bring the topic of Kender up, they have a tendency to just be kind of not looked at in a very good way. So the guy, I cannot pronounce your name. So how would this play out in their own culture? And are they incapable of learning that other cultures will become angry and take action if the visitors in other land are they unable to adapt? I've read probably 60 of the Dragonlance books at this point, which is where Kender kind of got their origin, was in those books. And every time Kender come up, they are unable to adapt because they're not necessarily evil. Like I said, like the article says, they're not evil, but what they are is they're more childlike in their behavior. So think of them like grown-up toddlers. It's like talking to a 5-year-old and trying to convince them that they're doing something wrong. You think that someday they'll learn and someday they'll grow up, but they don't necessarily do that. So they are unique in that they look at their ways and they just don't understand why everybody kind of goes with the hey, that's my property and you can't go in there and you can't do that. So they don't mean it badly. They're just sort of like a childlike innocence in the way they approach things. And if you're watching on X, the only place I can see comments from is Twitter. I'm kind of watching X to see if somebody leaves a comment, but I don't always catch it. But I see it live from YouTube. So, yeah, they do accept it in each other. So, like, there's a whole Dragonlance book that's kind of set in the Kender world, in a Kender village. And I mean, it was a short story, but it was there's Kender gully dwarves and something in one of the books they accept it in each other because they just have no sense of personal property. They don't get why people would actually want to own things for any longer than sort of a couple of days, because then it gets boring, right? So they don't necessarily look at it like a bad thing. They just look at it like, okay, I've seen that, I'm bored with it now. And they kind of go on their way. So yeah, it's they don't mean anything by it. It's just kind of the way it works. But yeah, they are fun. I think I found the cover of one. Yeah, there it is. Kender Gully. Here's a Dragonlance book. If you have not read it, that might help. It's actually a fun read too. I've got a copy of it. I've been loading cover art onto my Twitter and my Instagram channel, or Instagram feed, so you can see it. But Kender, Gully Dwarves, and Gnomes, right there. It's part of Tales. It's a series of short stories that kind of tells you a lot more about Kender and Gully Dwarves, as it turns out. And gnomes. But I always like the Kinder Village. It kind of gives it like a childlike innocence and it's just playful. So they do accept it each other, and they don't necessarily think badly of somebody if they wandered off because the Kinder probably forgot that they owned something anyway. So they're cute. Um, I think, but when they get played, typically, I think what people do is they have a tendency to just treat them as kleptomaniacs, like anything that's interesting or valuable they steal. But right there in the instruction manual, it says they don't really value things. They kind of they lose interest in it fast. The other thing I think that's interesting about the way I've heard of them being played is Margaret Weiss, who wrote along with Tracy Hickman the first six and many of the later Dragonlance books, and they kind of were the ones that sort of wrote the background of Kender, or at least showed how Kender interacted with people. The way she plays them, she said this on Twitter one day before she kind of left Twitter for I think Facebook. Um, and the way she plays Kender is different than the way most people do. She tells the dungeon master, "Hey, take one item from everybody and put it in my pouch, but don't tell me or them what item I have." Right? That way, when they need it, they're like, "Hey, where is it?" And both she, her Kender character and that other person are surprised that it's in her pouch because that's just the way they work. They just have no attention span. So think of them like sort of half-sized humans with severe attention deficit disorder, and they're really good at picking locks because it's interesting. So that to me is kind of Kender in a nutshell, and I think they're largely underrated, and I think they kind of get abused as kleptomaniacs, but they're cute. I like them. They're kind of fun. Um, People do kind of treat them as gypsies, so when they show up in a town, everybody's kind of like, wait a minute. And there was one Dragonlance book, I don't remember which one it was. It might have been Kender Gully Doors and Gnomes, where they were trying to figure out how to take over a part of this town or do whatever it was. And the idea was there were a bunch of Kender in jail, so they were just going to release them all. And that would be largely distracting to all the town guards because you get 80 new Kender running around all of a sudden that used to be all locked up. Well, now they're not, right? You could chase down the Kender. And can you imagine trying to chase down a bunch of toddlers, right? that run as fast as high school athletes, and are really good at hiding but they kind of behave like toddlers. So they're kind of fun, and I think they add some comic relief to to the whole. They can add comic relief if they're done properly to a campaign. So it's fun. I think they are anyway. All right, so that's all I've got on Kender. I've got a whole bunch. I went out and bought a ton of old back issues of Dragon magazine because mine disappeared over the years. And I'm finding a bunch of these little articles like all about this and all about that. I found one that I'm going to read through that's all about what was it? Gully Doors. So I'm going to read the article on Gully Doors. I'll probably do a little quick live stream on them tomorrow sometime. But play them, enjoy them, don't abuse them. They are not just little what you call it, kleptomaniacs. They really are just childlike, innocent people that like to pick locks. So everybody have a great day. If you're out in California, please stay safe. If you get an evacuation order, just go. And I wish everybody has a great weekend. Talk to you soon.